Hello and welcome to the In the Money Players podcast. This is our show for Tuesday, October 17th, a special buy, sell, and hold of the Breeders' Cup Favorites Edition. We have inspected the prices internationally on all the Breeders' Cup races, and we will be discussing them, some very briefly because it's really too early to have the conversations, but others, we can get into some fairly substantial debate slash ideas for how we're going to be approaching this year's Breeders' Cup, because I don't know about Big Turn's desk, but when I look at, there's really two things I look at first when I'm looking at a horse race. One, trying to get a good sense of the pace straight away. A little too early to do that with the Breeders' Cup, but the other is really get a sense of the favorite and the strength of that favorite as a way to start planning multi-race bets, contest strategy, etc. And to do that with me for these 14 Breeders' Cup races, first, we bring in a man coming to us from Saratoga Springs, New York, wearing the spiffy new JK Collection Breeders' Cup shirt. He is Jonathan Kinchin. What's up, JK?
It's a fun shirt. It's got a lot of cool little patches. My favorite one is obviously there's a couple of favorites, but I like the 2004 patch from old Lone Star Park. I know my man Nicky the Boss likes that one as well.
And that's the man we're bringing in next, another Planet Texas person. I'm sure your first Breeders' Cup, JK, was that 2004 for Nick. I wonder what his first one was. Answer that question for us, Nick Tammaro, your first Breeders' Cup in person.
That one also, yeah. I was an employee. In fact, a mutual clerk working on the first turn at Lone Star. So that was my first, and then I've been to, I think, 13 since.
Pretty good, pretty solid. Did you happen to see a young JK staggering around that day, having no idea what he was doing?
I don't know what size his hair would have been back then, so that would have been the calling card. If it was big, maybe I'd remember. But no, I remember working at a $100 window, and I'm pretty sure by the end of the day, I outpaced the number of tickets I sold everybody else 2-1.
I had in 2004, I had dreadlocks, and I was like at the half-mile pole in some chalet. I didn't hit one wager, and I was not at the $100 betting window at that point in my life yet. So we probably did run into each other.
Let's look at these favorites, boys, and we're going to start off with a race that I don't think we're going to have much to talk about, the Juvenile Turf Sprint. And the reason we're not going to have much to talk about is we don't know who's going to be here really yet. Big Ev's listed internationally as a solid favorite, actually. I was surprised to see 5-1, which would make technically Big Ev's a soft sell for me, just because, I know there's a bunch of other horses, many of whom are trained by George Weaver. I'm going to be interested in this spot. I'm just not sure I'm going to want to take a Euro as the favorite going this sharp, flat 5, given the trouble they often have adapting to those conditions. I'm not saying they can't win, but I'm pretty much saying I don't want to take one as the favorite. Anything to add, Nick Tammaro?
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you completely. The Euros finally struck for the first time in this particular race last year. And I think going 5.5 at Keeneland, probably a little bit more forgiving trip for a horse with European style. Big Evs has looked very good in his last couple of starts. Obviously, you don't want to hold losing in the Nunthorpe against him. That came against older horses that included Living the Dream, will be one of the favorites in the regular turf sprint. So I would imagine he'll take plenty of beating, but No Name Mats, Crimson Advocate, all horses that should take plenty of money if they're ultimately headed there as well.
Amidst Waves, too, one I'll throw in there off that trip last time I'm interested in. JK, how about you? Anything to add on the Juvenile Turf Sprint, or shall we move it forward?
Yeah, I mean, let's not forget, I know they've had a couple of successes, but they don't usually beat us at this game. Now, I know that they have. They did it at Keeneland. Actually, they did it at Keeneland with glass slippers, which is interesting. It was at Keeneland. Then they did it last year as well. And the Juvenile Turf Sprint, but it's not something that I think you can lean on very much. That horse looked impressive, Big Evs. He was a forward type of horse, but yeah, I mean, I am a silently an Amidst Waves fan for a various array of reasons. And then don't forget, when it comes from a money standpoint, Crimson Advocate is going to take some money as a horse that won at Ascot. Like, I think that horse will probably still take a little bit of money because you'll get some European love for that horse based off of that race. If I'm not mistaken, the horse that they were in a photo with came back and won. But we won't be rooting for Crimson Advocate for our friends at Black Type anymore. It looks like there was a sale. The owner on Breeders' Cup website has been changed to Wathnayan Racing,
who's one of the leading, I think maybe even a leading person in Qatar, who also won races at the Ascot meeting, if I have all that information right. So
that's a great sale. If that's a great sale, and many congratulations, because I don't know how much better it gets than her having just won that race. So
it's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out in the Juvenile Turf Sprint. Let's move on to the Juvenile Fillies, boys. This is one where, once again, I think we're going to have some agreement. I'll let JK go first.
Yeah, I think it's pretty simple. I mean, I think Tammaro is the one that will take a lot of money, and if I'm not mistaken, I think she might be the shortest price. That's more of a Nick Tammaro game, but I feel like she'll be the shortest price in the 2 days that we're out there in California.
I think that's possible. It'd be interesting to see what happens with some of the Euros and other spots. Right now, in terms of anti-post, you do have Goodnight Olive listed as lower than Tammaro. But yeah, I do think she looks about a 4 to 5 shot. Nick, what do you think of her chances? And give us your weigh in on that price question. Who's going to be the shortest of these favorites?
Yeah, I mean, the Filly and Mare Sprint could yield a shorter price with Goodnight Olive. Obviously, now with Echo Zulu not participating in any Breeders' Cup race, there's going to be a tremendous amount of support for Goodnight Olive, who's coming in off that good runner-up finish. Tammaro is going to be, I think, when all is said and done, will be the shortest price, just because I fear this field won't get very big. We only saw 6 in the Juvenile Fillies 2 years ago at Del Mar, and I don't know what having a horse like Tammaro in the Juvenile Fillies does is it really dissuades a lot of the Eastern-based horsemen from wanting to ship all the way out there. And horsemen nowadays run as infrequently as possible, so it fits with what they do perfectly. So, yeah, I think she's going to end up probably – I'm not going to be surprised if she's odds on, to be honest, because we didn't really see anything in the Frizette or the Alcibiades that would really put much of a scare into her, and we saw a horse that she vanquished very easily come right back and win the Chandelier.
We are all in agreement, strong buy, or but at least buy on Tammaro. Let's talk about the Juvenile Fillies Turf. And Nick, we're going to keep it with you for the Juvenile Fillies Turf because I sense from looking at our pre-show notes that you might have a stronger opinion than we do. Opera singer right now, the daughter of Justify, 2 to 1 in the international markets. What do you think of that price?
Yeah, half to 2015 Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf winner hit it a bomb. You know what I think is? I think our horses stink in this division. I think she's an absolute cinch. This is a real horse. I mean, this is a horse that won a Longchamp on ARC weekend, a Group 1 winner, and Aidan O'Brien, just a horseman that is going to identify which horses want firm turfs. They're going to get it at Santa Anita. You know, not to disparage the domestic lot that we have, but they're not much. And I'm thinking that she'll be very, very hard to beat.
For me, it was a hold only because who else is going to come over, and just thinking 2 to 1 was maybe short enough at this stage. But you make a compelling case, and the hit of the bomb pedigree note as well as Justify. Pretty exciting prospect there in Opera Singer. Any thoughts on this one, JK?
No, I mean, not really. You know how I am when it comes to these European races. I like to listen and digest and listen and digest and listen and digest. And once I get all warm and fuzzy by Friday morning is when I can kind of start to make some further decisions. I'm a speed figure guy, and without having multiple figures to look at for European horses, I have to get multiple opinions that kind of help me get to where I need to get. But I will say this, I agree with Nick. I mean, it just we don't have any killers over here. There's no Lady Eli. There's no newspaper of records. That's for certain.
All right, let's pivot to the Juvenile, a race where we have not one, but 2 favorites right now in the form of Locked and Timberlake. I'm very agnostic about this division, so I'm probably a double hold here at this point. Still just wanted to get my wits about me and really dive deeper into this race. I don't feel like either of those is for me. I don't have a clear one price that I'd back either of those horses at, or that I'd want to honestly be booking bets at. So let's bring it to the group who have more opinions than I do on this one. And we'll go right back to you, Nick Tammaro. Tell us about your feelings on Locked and Timberlake.
Yeah, I mean, if given a choice between the two, I definitely prefer Timberlake. I thought that their respective final preps, I thought Timberlake looked better. I know there was some people remarked that Locked went wide, but how exactly do you think Locked is going to continue to make a living if he doesn't have wide trips, right? He's an off the pace horse. I did think that Jose Ortiz rode him with a lot of confidence, which was a good sign to see. But based on the speed figures that they earned and the visual element to it, I thought Timberlake was just incredibly strong in the Champagne. He moved exactly what Florent asked him to. He was very handy, and I'm envisioning that he'll be very, very tough in the Juvenile. The other thing I would add into the element here is that at this point, isn't Prince of Monaco actually the morning line favorite for this race? I guess it's tough to say.
Yeah, you would think. I copied blindly from Odds Checker, but as I'm thinking about it, how is it not Prince of Monaco at a shorter price than he?
And in fairness, I mean, and they have City of Troy in there, which is useless, but they do have blocked Timberlake, Moose, and Prince of Monaco at 5s and 6s respectively. So I mean, it's basically, and I think that's going to end up how the race gets bet. Really, is that those 4 horses are all going to go off within probably 3 or 4 clicks of one another. It actually shapes up as a really compelling betting race because I mean, I don't even know if Prince of Monaco is the better Bob Baffert horse. I thought Moose winning the American Pharoah was very good. And obviously what we know is that the Prince of Monaco that won the Best Pal and the Timberlake that won the Champagne, the lot that was probably at his best in his maiden win, if all those horses, and Moose American Turf, all those horses show up, this is a really good race.
That's a great point. What do you think, JK? I'd love to hear your take on not just Locked and Timberlake, but some of the others Nick mentions as well.
Well, I mean, I think it's a little tricky, right? I think that there's 4 horses, maybe 3.5 that could really end up being favored, whether it be Timberlake, Locked, or Prince of Monaco. I don't think Locked will be favored, but everyone's going to get excited about that trip. They're going to talk about it. You're going to hear about it. They're going to show it 87 times on whatever channel is that you watch. I do think Timberlake probably has the most upside in terms of like you're going to get a better price than what I think he could potentially do on the day, if that makes sense. Like he could run off the screen and want a 104 buyer. And in the price that you get on him, I don't think will reflect that, if that makes sense. Prince of Monaco, there's going to be a lot of question marks around him, but it's going to be a little bit of a Bob Baffert thing, and Bob, do you trust? So, I mean, they're all kind of selly feeling to me because I feel like they're all going to be a little bit overbet in a wide open field. I think you kind of want to, if Locked creeps up to 6-1, 7-1, 8-1, suddenly he makes sense. Prince of Monaco gets ignored, or Timberlake, or Muth even. So, I would pick Timberlake, though, at this point, based on what I think the prices will be.
Sort of a soft buy for JK there on Timberlake. Nick, a little bit interested. I'm throwing up my hands in that race for now. Part of doing this kind of analysis early, you're not looking to lock yourself into opinions that then you're going to have to get yourself off of lately. But it is fun to see where certain things jump out. And I was surprised to see in our pre-show notes, somebody must have done some serious pissing in our Cheerios this morning, boys, because we're all taking the sort of cynical view in the dirt mile. I'll say as a fan, there's nothing more I want to see at the Breeders' Cup this year than Cody's Wish getting the job done in the dirt mile. 7-2, he's listed in the odds. And this is just one of those, we refer in gambling a lot to our priors. My priors tell me, based on what we've seen from Cody's Wish in the last 2 starts, that he's the kind of horse you're probably supposed to bet against. Doesn't mean you won't be cheering him back to the winner's circle if he kicks sand in our face, stuffs us in a locker. But I'm thinking this is an opportunity to hit with somebody else. Nick, you're never one to shy away from saying things that are not going to be applauded in the court of optimist public opinion. What do you think about Cody's Wish in the dirt mile?
That's the kind way of referring to me as the turd in the punch bowl, right? But I look. I think there's 2 ways to approach this. Number one, I do think 7-2 is pretty high on him. Now, I don't think ultimately his price will be anywhere near that. I think he'll be significantly shorter price, especially given that the only other horses, at least on Odds Checker, that look like they're taking any respect are Lemon Pop and Practical Move. Practical Move will be a somewhat popular horse in this race, I think, when all is said and done, but it doesn't look as if there are a lot of other possibilities that are going to be running in here. So I still think Cody's Wish will end up a pretty short priced favorite. I don't love him at a 2-turn mile, to be perfectly honest with you. It's not really his most ideal trip. He obviously has not looked quite as good in his last 2 starts as he did in the prior, but he's still clearly the horse to beat. He's just not a horse that I'm taking a big stand on right now as far as wanting to get on board with. I think knowing the final field, getting a little sense of the pace scenario, he seems vulnerable to me to a situation like what we saw in 2019 when Omaha Beach lost, when he got stuck behind a runaway leader. But if somebody in there has a lot of speed and wants to go out and do their thing, I can see them being very dangerous.
We should mention this show not only popping up in the podcast feed, but also on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube or if you're listening, go over to YouTube. Give us your best buy, sell, or hold at this point of the day. Drop that one in the comments so we can continue the conversation over there. JK, where are you with Cody's Wish?
Yeah, I know myself well enough to know that I need to police myself a little bit. And so I'm telling myself sell right now, but that's because I know I can get a little enthusiastic, a little excited about a short price horse. And so I'm trying to keep myself under wraps here. Here's what I think. If Cody's Wish runs his Met Mile, to Nick's point, which was around one turn, but if he has that performance, he's going to win for fun. But you have to ask yourself what happened in the Whitney and what happened in the, what was that? Was the Kelso, Nick, or the
Vosburg?
If what happened there is, if what happened in those two races is who he is now, then he's got a chance of getting beat. And so I just want to keep my options open to evaluate that fully. But I will say this. I can tell you right now, I do believe that there is a possibility that he could find that Met Mile performance. I do think that there's some excuses in the Whitney for the two turns. And then in the Vosburg, just not having the greatest trip and the pace not being exactly what he needs and all those other situations. I think there's a world in which he can run that Met Mile. So I'm just trying to keep myself contained a little bit. It's like falling in love with the Fountain of Youth winner and then like trying to go bet a Derby future. I'm trying to prevent myself from doing that.
Next up, we have another short price favorite for you to weigh in on, JK. That's Goodnight Olive in the Filly and Mare Sprint. Where do you stand with her at this point? Obviously, this race lost some luster with the sad news about Echo Zulu getting hurt. Hopefully, tentatively the news on her has been positive. There's been some good reports out of the stall. Hopefully, that one's going to have a happy ending, though jury's still very much out as far as that goes. But now, Goodnight Olive, big favorite, 7-5 listed as for this race. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, these other horses just aren't as good as Goodnight Olive. Goodnight Olive kind of had a tricky year, right? I think she didn't. I think most people would think she didn't have necessarily the year that many thought she would have. But I am confident in one thing, that in defeat, her best race that she ran all year, and possibly the best race she ever ran, was when she lost to Echo Zulu, considering the circumstances. I think she's sitting on a big race.
I tend to agree. I mean, 7-5, that's probably short enough. I was loving her in this race with Echo Zulu in it and the idea that somebody else could do the donkey work, as it were, but I'm still siding with her. She was one of my early opinions on the card, and I'm not changing that. Nick, can we make it a chorus on Goodnight Olive as a buy?
No, I'll be the cold water on it. I do agree with Jonathan completely. I think Goodnight Olive's best race this year, unquestionably, and likely in her entire career, was the effort and defeat in the Ballerina. And I would warn people that it is okay to think that a horse ran very well when they lost. We're an overly results-oriented world, but she ran extremely well that day, and quite honestly looked a lot better in there than she had in any of her three prior starts in 2023, including that Bed of Roses, where she was really all out to get up over Wicked Halo, and it didn't look really like herself. What I fear with Goodnight Olive, and I'll remind everybody, Steve Asmussen may not have Echo Zulu for this race, but Echo Zulu was likely going to the sprint, and that says a lot about Society. I think he feels very, very strongly about Society. She's been out there since he sent his plane load of horses in typical Asmussen fashion to get them ready. I know Society rode a big bias at Ellis. She's really gone about this in the JV kind of way, going to Charlestown and kind of staying out of focus. But she's a very good horse that they seem to have perfected in terms of what she wants to do distance-wise and race flow-wise. And, I mean, I'll tack on top of that Chad Brown, 6 starters at Santa Anita in the last 5 years on dirt, 0 for 6, only 2 in the money, just a couple of Breeders' Cup starters along the way. So not exactly a huge sample size, but not a guy who's known for shipping his dirt horses around the country and doing all that great. So I'd be kind of a sell on Goodnight Olive at 7-5. I mean, she's probably more to me like a 5-2 or 3-1 shot.
Okay, so sort of a soft sell there. The Juvenile Turf is up next. This is a race where, as far as I'm concerned, knowing we're limited for time, we could almost just punt down the field because while we do have the favorites on odds checker right now, Ghost Rider and Unquestionable in the 6-1 range, this is all going to be who shows up. I will say I was impressed by the form boost that Carson's Run got from the what's the horse called? Prince. Cassie horse with Prince in the name that ran off the screen at Woodbine over the weekend.
My boy Prince.
My boy Prince. I do think it's probably a Euros race. I just think it's too early to have any totally intelligent conversation about this, and I'm happy to kick it on down the road. But obviously, we'll bring you guys in. If you have one you've got your eye on in here, or a particular thought about Ghost Rider or Unquestionable. Nick, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I don't have much of a view at this point. I don't think that our horses in this particular division are quite as soft maybe as the Fillies. I also don't know if anybody as robust as a horse like Opera Singer is coming over. So yeah, a lot will be determined by what happens in terms of the field and whatnot. It looked to me like, Ghost Rider looks solid enough. So yeah, I don't have much of a lean at this point, and look forward to kind of seeing these fields coming together.
JK, you happy enough to move it along to the Distaff?
Yeah, I'm good with the pass for now.
This is a funny one for me because I probably overthought this, right? Because the Distaff is a race right now where I really, really like Clairiere. And I will be betting on Clairiere probably by the time this video goes up. But I didn't want to list myself as a sell on Idiomatic at 5-2, pretty much entirely because I have a feeling in the end I'm going to be saving with Idiomatic as sort of the horse that I think will be the best speed. And I know I'm going to have some Idiomatic over Clairiere and maybe some solid backups. So I didn't want to be on the record saying sell, even though I really like enough to win this division. So I'm going to technically be a defensive buy on Idiomatic, who I do think will be the best of speed, but she's not going to be my top pick in the race. Nick, how about you? Where are you with Idiomatic?
I feel like I've liked Idiomatic when you were supposed to. And this is a time where it's one of the few I've gotten right. This is a time where you're supposed to now take a more critical approach, because I just don't think she's going to get the trip that she did and it has in her last two starts. I think they're going to make her work much, much harder early. And I'm not altogether certain she can't withstand that. But the problem right now is that what glitters with Idiomatic is a type of trip that just isn't going to be available to her. She's not going to be isolating on the front end, setting moderate fractions. So I think as the favorite, you're supposed to look for other options. I wish there were more, but at this point, I'd have to sell at that price.
JK, how about you? Where are you with Idiomatic?
Yeah, I'm a sell. I'm just going to, you had Brad Free the other day kind of talking about just handicapping basics. This pace has to be pretty quick, right? I mean, randomized is going to at least be forward. Adair Manor's going to be forward. Idiomatic. We know Brad Cox and Florent Giroux aren't going to grab a horse that has speed. Search Results doesn't come from that far out of it. Nest, I think they're going to ride aggressively because, taking her back in her last two starts hasn't worked. The pace has to be fast, right? And if I'm going to look for a horse that can maybe sustain that fast pace, I'm going to look for a horse with a better price than what Idiomatic will be. So I'm going to sell.
We're going to talk very quickly about the Breeders' Cup Mile, where Paddington is listed as the favorite. Still a big question if Paddington will be turning up here. If he does, 5-2, and if we knew he was coming, that might be a buy. But at this point, it's just a hold. With so many of these turf races, without knowing who's going to be showing up, it's just very hard to have much to say about it. We've only got about 6 or 7 minutes left, and a lot more races where I think we can get into some more healthy debate. So, guys, unless you want to chime in a quick thought about the mile, I say we say sort of hold too early and move on. And anything quick on the mile from either one of you guys?
I will say this: Paddington isn't even listed on the Breeders' Cup website. They're pretty on top of it when it comes to situations like that. I don't know what that means, but I would say that it means something worse than it means good. In terms of him coming over.
He's in the book. Every betting place had him there. So that's why I listed it, but they could be wrong. Could be breaking news. We'll come back. Don't believe me. We're punting on the mile for today. We will not be punting on it for the Breeders' Cup season. You can find so much stuff for free in themoneypodcast.com, on our airwaves, on our YouTube channel. Keep abreast of all those things. And then if you want everything, our entire Breeders' Cup package, you can check that out in themoneypodcast.com/plus. For now, let's move on to the sprint, where we have Elite Power bidding to make it 2 in a row. And this is a good one where, judging on our pre-show notes, we have a buy, we have a sell, and we have a hold. I'm the boring hold, just thinking, I'm on record elsewhere thinking Elite Power is gonna get a good trip in here and be a horse that I want on side, but I wasn't overly thrilled at 9-4 without knowing the total shape of the race. Nick, how do you see Elite Power at that price from this far out?
Yeah, I'm not bowled over by him at 2.25 to 1. Gennady going back to 6 furlongs, I think, is interesting. Although I do hope that they take full advantage of the pace edge that he has on a horse like Elite Power in order to try and beat him. But this division looks like it might be getting a little bit better as the season goes on, and so I'm intrigued by taking a shot with some other horses. I don't necessarily want a horse with a deep closing style like Elite Power at 6 furlongs at Santa Anita.
Fair enough. JK, you take the other view here. What is it that makes you really excited about Elite Power in this one?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not 100% sure, but I think I'm falling in love with Elite Power. It's been a few dates and things are going really well. It's very nice to me, but I'm thinking about falling in love, and it's for a couple of reasons. One is I have a strong belief that his kick's going to be more intense going 6, and I think that his kick's going to be more effective with real pace to close into. I think that what we saw from him a lot over the summer was him overcoming or trying to overcome scenarios that weren't really ideal for him against a really good horse in Gunite. And one of the times he actually still overcame it anyways. I think that he's kind of elite, no pun intended, in this division with some horses that I think kind of set it up for him. So I'm definitely a buy at this point on Elite Power.
We will speed round these next 3 turf races, but we each, I think, have something to say along the way. So I'll just start with Living the Dream, who I was impressed just with the fact that they got the local prep in. I think the horse has a chance to move up off of that. Went too fast, did Live in the Dream last time, but I just think that having that experience, this horse is capable of running like a 107 buyer, and having the local run and seeing 6 to 1, that was enough to put me in the modest buy camp. You guys weren't as excited about the effort. Nick, we'll start with you.
No, I thought it was good. I mean, I'm concerned about what Living the Dream will face pace-wise in the actual turf sprint. So, I mean, that's really what I'm intrigued by seeing, because obviously he's quick and can certainly be involved right from the start. And so, yeah, I don't have a strong lean against there. I wouldn't be buying right now. I was probably more of a hold than a sell on this, just waiting to see kind of how the field comes together.
Gotcha. You in a similar boat there, JK? Anything to add on Living the Dream?
What did I even put? Did I put sell? Yeah. So for me, look, I think this is one of those races where this doesn't seem like the smartest of opinions, but I feel very confidently that one of three horses is going to win this race. And I think that's actually valuable when you're trying to play multi-race bets or whatever it is you're trying to do. I think Caravel, Big Invasion, or Living the Dream are going to win. Caravel is either going to not be a problem for Living the Dream from a pace standpoint. Caravel might love the firm, might love the 5. Big Invasion, I think, is going to love the 5 with the cutback with speed, all these things. So in that situation, I can't take, if I think that one of those 3 has a really good shot of winning, it's not really a race in which I would be betting to win anyways, especially on a horse like Living the Dream, who's going to have, like Nick said, significantly more pace pressure than they had at Keeneland.
Real fast, we don't have time for this tangent, but Caravel didn't exactly look like it was going to repeat in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. I didn't think off that effort in the Franklin on Sunday. Or how are you excusing that real quick, JK?
I just feel like if I train Caravel, and I'm not a horse trainer, I would say to myself, we've had a long break. She's a defending champion. We're going to get in no matter what. I'm not going to fully crank her for this Keeneland race so that she's then knocked out when I need her back in 3 weeks. I'm going to just kind of let that be her final screw of tightening. And that's the way that I feel like Brad probably approached it. I can't see Brad fully cranking her up to win the race at Keeneland when she's got a bigger dance to dance 3 weeks from now.
It'll also be a lot drier, a lot more firm at Santa Anita. Filly and Mare Turf, co-favorites right now in the form of Warm Heart and Inspiral. For me, I'm just throwing up my hands and saying it's too early. Let's see who shows up. Inspiral could go in the mile. So much stuff could happen. The only one of us who seemed to have a strong-ish opinion on this race was Nick, who's pro Inspiral for the Filly and Mare Turf. Tell us about that opinion, Nick.
Hey, in Gosden, I trust, right? If he wants to go to 10 furlongs for a horse that's only miled her entire career, then he obviously knows something. And we've seen the European trainers and horses dominate this race over time. Warm Heart is obviously going to be a really strong competitor. If she goes there, it'll kind of be funny in terms of the collision of a horse cutting back in distance versus one stretching out. Warm Heart is very, very good. Don't get me wrong, and probably will appreciate the firm turf as well. This is quietly shaping up as one of the more interesting races of the weekend because our contingent is not that bad. It's not that great. But I mean, now if we can sort of adopt Maj, having run once in America, then we've got a few better horses than we might have thought, a couple of months ago.
It is a cool race for sure. Let's talk very quickly about the turf. Auguste Rodin, 3-1 favorite. We all listed hold. Who knows who's going to show up? Be amazing to see this talented runner. Doesn't run his race every time. Doesn't exactly always bring his track with him. But boy, on his best race, he'd be awfully dangerous. Any quick thoughts, JK, either looking back to the Filly and Mare turf where I skipped you or on the turf where I know you're an up to the mark fan?
Yeah, no, they're both holds for me because I really do like a couple of American runners, so I got to see what happens in those situations. I like an Italian in the Filly and Mare turf. I think that the added distance, the firm ground's going to really kind of help her out quite a bit. Looks a little bit like Day at the Spa to me, but a more talented and probably better version. And then as far as the turf is concerned, yeah, I mean, it's a hold for me as well. I'm not going to try to beat, the Euros that come over here, but I definitely will be using up to the mark.
It's I think it's bad news for in Italian if Maj goes here. I think Maj will not challenge for the lead, but I think she's gonna make it very hard on the in Italian case. If Maj goes in the mile, which is still a possibility, I start to like your in Italian case a lot better. Let's talk about the Classic. We just got a couple of minutes left, guys, but this is a good one to discuss because we've got one of each perspective here. Arcangelo, you have the least strong opinion, JK, of the three of us, so we'll let you go first.
Yeah, I mean, I like the 3-year-olds in here. We'll have to see how Arcangelo is trading. I didn't like the way he trained when he first got there, but apparently he's improved since then. I'll let the kind of clockers let me know how he's developing along. I want to know what's going on with Arabian Night. I want to know what's going on with Go Rocket Ride. I'm still in the 3-year-old camp, but since I can't nail one of them down, there's no way I can buy Arcangelo at this price.
And we're already head-to-head on that opinion about the 3-year-olds in this race. You're pro, not exactly like wildly anti, but I think feels like some of these older horses are a little bit underrated at this point. The White Abarios, the Zandons. And I just felt like, as much as I like Arcangelo, another one, I'd be clapping back to the winner's circle. I wouldn't rule out having on some tickets because I like him as a horse so much, again, pending other info, but I just felt like 7-2 was short enough in a race where there's going to be more appealing options for me. So I'm selling for now at that price with the idea that, this might be one I find a way to keep on side. Nick, you're pro Arcangelo in here.
I've been an Arcangelo guy since day one, so I can't give up now. I think he's been kind of the unheralded horse in this division, and now in the handicap division all season. So I'm looking forward to seeing him get an opportunity to really put his name in lights again. And I will admit that I'm probably a little bit more of a fan than I am a backer at this point from a betting perspective. I guess he'll go favorite in this race. He can't be much lower than the 5-2 or 3-1 range, especially if we get Go Rocket Ride, Arabian Night, White Abario, all those horses in the gate. There's going to be some Japanese horses in there that'll take some money as well, some that are more popular than others, including Derma Sotogake. So it shapes up as a really interesting race, and I hope that Arcangelo comes into it 100% because he's a horse that's always trained well in his career, and that's really tipped off how well he's run on a number of occasions.
He has been a horse who's known to tout himself. Pay attention. We'll be having info about that. Going to have Vanessa Ryle out there with me in the mornings. Breeders' Cup week. We'll be giving our daily recaps of everything we see. You can follow that with the Breeders' Cup content team. Breeders' Cup content team cracking out some great stuff. Really enjoyed the video they did on Ushba Tesoro. Speaking of Japanese contenders. Well, boys, that's going to be it for this segment. Really appreciate your time today. Will be many more of these to come. And reminder, if you're watching on YouTube, leave us a comment. Let us know who you think right now is the buy, sell, or hold of the meeting at this year's Breeders' Cup. JK and Nick, thank you guys so much. And thank you also. Cheers, my brother. And thanks also to producer AJ for for coming through in the clutch and throwing these cool graphics together. Always a pleasure working with him. If you are watching on YouTube, just let the next video scroll. If it's not ours, skip it. If it's ours, keep watching. And if you're listening, we'll be back right after this.